Coach Pedon, welcome to the basketball podcast.
Hey, great to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
What a year. It took you 3 years to get to this point, and there's still more to go, but pretty good stuff so far in your first 3 years.
Yeah, we've built it progressively here over the first 3 years, which seems like a long time in this modern world of college basketball. We've made tangible progress and growth each year, both tangibly, things that you can see, wins, talent, statistics, things like that. And then there's been real growth behind the scenes as well, which we all know when you're building a program is, I would argue, as important as anything, especially in your early years. Yeah, we've got some good things to build on, but we got a long way to go as well.
Always a long way to go, and I know you won't stop, but let's go back to when you initially took over the program and maybe give us an idea of your initial vision for the program when you took over and how has it evolved over the past 3 years?
Yeah, when I was looking at jobs, I wanted to be very picky and particular about jobs that I pursued because I realized in our world of college basketball, you're probably going to get one shot at this. And so I wanted to identify a place that I felt like I could recruit, attract, and build the type of program that I wanted to build. And I thought from early on in looking at Illinois State of what I knew and what I was learning, that I thought this was a place that I could do that. I can attract the kinds of young men that I want to recruit. It has a beautiful campus, a fan base that is very supportive. Basketball is important here. So that was most important, I would say, for me off the top. I wanted to build a program that have an old school view. And I'm not saying that I haven't modernized what I'm looking to do because I realize there's an element of year to year with this. But I don't ever want to lose sight of building a program that is built to last. I think I read somewhere recently where they said the best leaders, no matter what walk of life that you're in, whether it's coaching or you're a CEO of a company, the best leaders have an ability to impart their vision on that particular program or company or business, what have you, and it will replicate and duplicate itself long after that leader is gone. And I try to think through that lens because I do believe in building a program, not just a team. I don't want to microwave this program. I want to build a very strong foundation, Chris, and I think we've done that. You got to be bold with what you're looking for, how you want to build it, the types of people you want to build it with. We want to build a program here that in time is the gold standard in our conference. And we're not there yet, but we've made strides. This is a hard conference to do it in because there's so many great coaches and we've been a one bid league. And I would argue this conference, Missouri Valley Conference, is as hard of a conference to do that in as there is in the country, just because of the quality of programs, the quality of players, and the quality of coaching, which we have great respect for. I felt like this was a place that we could do it, and in doing that, become a player on the national stage.
Well, I love that. And you're representing that too, that you built a program, and we're going to dive into that because in this culture of basketball, there can be quick fixes sometimes that
Yeah.
would give the illusion of success, but not longevity of success. And I love that perspective. Can you walk us through the process of reshaping the program's culture and maybe what specific values or principles that you brought to this organization?
Sure. I love talking on this stuff because I think it applies to, again, all walks of life. You could be talking to a small business owner, someone that owns an insurance company, whatever for us, it's basketball, but really it's leadership. And I think as you're building your brand, so to speak, as you're building your program in our world, I think it's very important that you establish who you're going to be first. We have to establish that not only to our recruits, not only to our current players, but I've got to be able to establish that to our community as well, our fans, our boosters, our alumni, people that care about this program, to categorize it, to put it in their brains. This is who they are. This is what they're setting out to do, and being very intentional about that. Okay. So for us, that starts with people. We have a phrase and it's up on our back wall of our locker room. When you walk in the locker room, the very first thing on the back wall is you win with people. And this is a famous Woody Hayes phrase, and he had a book, You Win with People. And I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I grew up a diehard Ohio State fan. My dad, that was like his Bible, and he raised me to be a big Woody Hayes guy. And I've really carried that with me through the years. And I said, man, if I get an opportunity to run my own program, I want to have that as my main tenet within our program. So you win with people, great families, young men that fit our culture. There's nothing more important than the fit. I'm not trying to fit a round peg through a square hole, because I think you're wasting our time and you're wasting that student athlete's time. The fit and us doing our work on the front end is so important. When you establish the people that you have and who you're going to be, the approach, right? The mentality. How are you creating that belief? And you have to have a real clarity about what you're doing and what you're saying, of course. But the mentality that we emphasize daily is all in. And the way I view it is you're all in or you're against us. And this is a famous Jay Wrightism as he built Villanova. There's no gray area. There's no in between. I love it, because if we're clear with our vision and what's expected within our program, with our players, their behaviors, what's acceptable and what's not, it's very clear. You're either all in or you're against us. And that way you don't have to mess around with the middle ground, talking a guy into doing it right. No, you're either doing it right, you're doing it our way, or you're dead against us. And I try to create that mentality, and have since we took over the program. And I've got to be very clear in all areas, all parts of our program, in terms of what's expected. And I don't have a ton of rules, but it is very clear what is acceptable and what's not.
Well,
So
Coach,
those
I
are,
love that phrasing of gray areas, and I love that phrasing of just how you put that all together. So maybe can you give us one or two quick examples of things that players need to be all in on your
yeah,
program, and that there's no gray area?
sure. The response, we talk about response all the time. Basketball is a sport, is a world of how will you respond when things don't go your way. There's a lot of times 130, 140 possessions in our games. You're going to have a lot more things that go against you than they go for you. How do you respond? And we teach our players how to respond, what is acceptable and what is not. Body language, emphasis on that. Response in terms of respect towards the messaging that maybe you're receiving from a coach. Or how's your eye contact? Things like that. So it's either done our way or you're on the outside looking in. And our players will tell you we're very crystal clear on that. It's more about shaping behaviors. Chris, when you're asking for examples there, I think when I think of team building, I think so much of the clarity of the message and how that affects the quality of the action, right? So if we're clear with our messaging, the quality of the actions will be much cleaner. And in a lot of ways, we're behavioral, I don't want to say therapists, but we're behavioral shapers of our environment. And there's a phrase I have above my desk that I keep up there, and it says, environment is the invisible hand that shapes behavior. And that speaks to the importance of culture. And I just think we're constantly trying to emphasize and re-emphasize what our culture is all about. And the behaviors will follow suit. But you got to be very serious-minded in your approach and very clear with what you expect.
I love this. I love this inside depth that you're giving us in terms of your program. And clearly it's shown with the 3 years, the continuous improvement, and now the next challenge to keep going. And you mentioned your league, and we understand the league. It's a great league, great basketball league, particularly in terms of the coaches and the teams. But just focusing on yourself and your program, what are some things that you feel you need to do within your program to be able to get to that next level now with a 4th year of continuous improvement?
Yeah, I think every year we all do this as coaches. You have to take an autopsy of your program and take a step back and dive in and just really, with a clear conscience, evaluate what was good, what was bad, what was ugly, and what's left there in between. And for us as a program, I think offensively, we were in a really good space this year. We were the top or top two in our conference for most of the season. Our 2-point percentage or 3-point percentage, very good. Our efficiency, highest in school history, really good. So a lot of good stuff there. I love the way that we share the basketball, all of that. We think we play the right way. Defensively, there's no shortcuts. Normally, when you get into league play, there's not going to be shortcuts anyways. In our league, I think that especially holds true just because of the quality of basketball coaching and basketball character that exists in the Missouri Valley Conference. So you're not going to gimmick your way to a championship. You're just not. It honors the game being played a certain way. And that's really an off season. I think in the off season, that's going to be my biggest focus as I'm hiring a new staff member. That's a big part of my focus. And we have to continue to evolve. We have to continue to improve. Some of that is new ideas. Some of that is we got to get better at the things that we struggled in. And so taking an honest evaluation postseason is going to be very important for any coach at any level.
You mentioned offensive efficiency, and that was something that I wanted to go to. So we might as well go there now because, again, it's significant. And watching your team play, the efficiency on offense was noticeable. So talk to us a little bit about some of the specific offensive tactics or strategies that you emphasize to get your team scoring so effectively and efficiently.
Well, yeah, I think we're very much a concepts-based program with whatever that means. When I say that, I'm saying we rely on concepts for solutions, right? Like when defense shows this, what are you doing? Our players got to be able to react, not with 7 different solutions. We will have a couple different solutions and or concepts that we use to solve a coverage or solve a scenario. I don't think it's anything really revolutionary. I think when we recruit, we want to recruit smart, skilled, and tough players, guys that value winning, want to share the basketball, will be willing to play the right way. Something I talk about a lot is the paint, right? And establishing the paint. And the modern era of how do you get to the paint, it's so much predicated on spacing, which I get. The more shooting you have, the more gravity that's going to cause and it's going to create for a defense, right? They've got a guard. And that creates long closeout situations. But I think there's a lot of different ways to get to the paint. And we try to be creative in those. I do value having a big man that can post. I do. And I don't see myself ever coming off of that because I think it can be a real luxury. Now, I don't think you can pound it in for 40 minutes and expect that to be tenable over the course of a 35-game season. I don't. I think you got to be creative in the ways that you utilize your low post paint touch guy. What are some different ways? How are different ways that we can get him the ball where he is going to cause the defense to compact? So a lot of my emphasis goes on that and playing out of those concepts. And then last, I would say, is really value unique players. Unique. So we had a young man when I got to Butler. He changed my whole perspective. His name was Roosevelt Jones. And Roosevelt Jones was a point guard for 3 years, starting point guard, I believe, 3, maybe all 4, but I think at 3 years at Butler. And he took less than 5 3-pointers, I'll bet you, his whole entire career. Couldn't shoot, wasn't a shooter. The year I coached him, he was 1 for 1 from 3-point land. And that one was a 3-quarter court heave at the buzzer at halftime at Marquette from about 70 feet. So he could never shoot, but he was extremely unique. And I learned a lot just about the game, and I learned a lot about playing through a guy like that, even when the defense was playing off of him, and how that can be manipulated, so to speak. Yeah, I'm always learning and trying to learn from your podcasts and some others as well. But I think you got to be true to what your convictions are as a coach. And for me, so much of that is rooted in the paint and the variety of ways that we can compact the defense in the half court. In our league, you're going to have to be able to win games in the half court. And if you have superior talent, that becomes a lot easier for sure. But everything's fairly even in our league. How can you manipulate the defense to your advantage over the course of a 40-minute game within the half court? That's a big part of my thought process as we prepare for a season and prepare for each individual game.
Well, I don't want it to be lost on coaches about the unique player part. That is such a beautiful way of looking at things because I do think there are such unique players. And you mentioned even playing in the post nowadays, there can be advantages in the post for sure. But those unique players that don't necessarily fit the mold of what maybe power forward Division I player is
Right.
still a really good basketball player. And we've seen that at your, particularly in your conference over the last few years. I feel there's been so many of those players that
Yeah,
you would
there's
get. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're not at the highest level, right? We're not going to get the finished product. We're going to get the 6'5" four-man instead of the 6'9" four-man, or we're going to get the guy that was 6'10" but not very athletic, but he's very skilled. So how can you use that to your advantage? We posted our point guard a ton this year, and it's not all on Barkley actions either. I think that's become a real part of the game across the country here in the last 2 to 3 years, and that's cool. Teams catch on too.
It
It's
takes a lot to get there sometimes off the Barkley, doesn't it? And
it
for
does. You
coaching,
talk
Barkley turn a drive into a post up.
drive to post, yeah. And there's times where you watch teams and they set a record for the amount of dribbles that one player has taken in a half court setting. It's a part of the game. I just think the longer a player has the ball, the more eyeballs are able to laser in on where my man is and where the ball's at. And I think that becomes a little easier to guard in most cases.
But posting up the guard, doing some unique things, that's all part of coaching, and that's beautiful. But I want to come back to this, coach, because I know you said, oh, this seems very common nowadays, but it really isn't. The fact that you spend a lot of time, not just on concepts, but coverage solutions. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's the part that people like yourself are helping spread to coaches around the world. It's sure you can run a play, memorize a play, that's all good, but it doesn't matter. What brings the play to life is the coverage solutions within the actions and spending time on that. So, can you go a little deeper on that and give us a little bit more insight on how you actually work on, say, a coverage solution versus switching versus denial versus something, coach?
Yeah, sure. So I think, first of all, I always start with the personnel, right? Because one of our solutions last year may not fit our personnel as much this year. I found that to be true. And maybe you learn the hard way on that one. You're like, man, this worked so well last year. But yeah, we had a guy that was better at hitting the hole than this guy was, or whatever it might be. I just think, I think for all of us as coaches, we're at our best and our players are at our best when they're playing off of reaction, right? Able to make quick decisions and it becomes second nature for them. We want to ingrain in their head. I can give you like maybe some solutions. Okay. So if we had a point guard that teams would go under, and the first thing is we would want to get in his mind, okay, what are we okay with? I don't know if I want him shooting a three, a shoot behind three when they're going under. That's what they want you to do, right? So that might be a solution, but I've got to establish, first of all, what's our game plan here with this guy? And it might be different for the next guy, right? What's our game plan and what am I okay with? Late in clock, I might be okay with you shooting behind, but I don't want to come down in the very first ball screen we shoot or we see they go under, and now you're shooting a three with 22 on the clock. That's not great offense to me. I'll give you an example. Okay, so we would teach going under. Okay, first thing I'd want them to do and think about is we want to beat it with speed. Can you turn the corner? He's going under. Maybe your man gets jammed up on one of the three bodies underneath the screen. Can you beat it with speed and turn the corner? That's what I always want to be the first solution. Number two, and you see this everywhere, is what do you do when a guy goes under? You rescreen, right? So under equals rescreen. You rescreen and then you recalibrate. And you attack the other way? And the third would be the shoot behind. Get your rhythm shot. I see so many times when guys shoot behind off the bounce that it's not a rhythm shot and it affects their rhythm. Shooting off the bounce threes isn't a great solution for a lot of guys. So I have to establish that as a coach. But I want it ingrained in their head that those are our three things that we would do like right now. And if there's any concepts beyond, that might be a game by game deal. We've done some other ones like a Gortat style drive where the guy's going under and he goes way off of his body. The big rolls to the rim and seals. I don't know if I'm making sense to you there.
Absolutely making sense,
Yeah,
coach.
that in
That's
the
exactly
NBA.
what people need to hear is that's the part that is obviously fun coaching, but it's also the part that helps the players the most.
Yeah, it does. Just what are you looking for when you see a certain coverage? And hopefully that gives you an example there of 3 or 4 solutions that we would use maybe against an under coverage on a ball screen or dribble handoff.
If you don't mind staying here for 1 second, part of my role with the NBA is presenting to EYBL, Nike EYBL coaches on some of these things, these concepts like this. And the one thing that came out of this is the importance of permission and skill in terms of giving players an opportunity to be able to solve problems. And I love that you use the word solve problems because that's
Yeah.
ultimately what it is. But can you talk to us about that part of it? Because a certain amount of this confidence comes from this permission. And then, of course, they have to have the skill to be able to execute the solution.
It's hard. It's hard. I think it's one of the more challenging parts about coaching for college coaches in this era is because we got to establish trust in a lot shorter, tighter window. So again, going back to clarity with each individual, I've used that word a lot today, but I think it's so important in coaching. I find it's these permissions. I like when you say permission because I think I don't want them to look at it like I'm a parent and you're a child and I have these rules that you have to abide by because I think kids will very quickly feel boxed in, like you're limiting them. And in some ways you are. And it's okay to say that as a coach. In some ways you are limiting them. But I think along that journey for each individual player, they need to come to grips with what their gifts are. And when we get these guys at age 18 to 22, there's more and more of them in this era that haven't been told that, haven't been told they're not great at this. So why don't you do this? We have the great equalizer, which is the data, the stats that I rely on a lot. Okay. I don't want to use that as an inhibitor for a young man, but if I have a kid for 1 year, I address this stuff on the recruiting visit before a kid would ever commit to us. I got to know that he's going to accept coaching. And sometimes that's accepting stuff that you don't want to hear, right? I'm not doing it to tear you down. I'm acknowledging, hey, the data here in the film, which doesn't lie, they're showing me that this scenario is not great for you. I think it's best to do this kind of teaching in a one-on-one setting. I do. Because when you do it in front of the group, I think there's a lot of kids. We can argue as a softer culture and all. Yeah, I think it's different. I do than it was 20 years ago. But I think for the modern day student athlete, I think doing this in a one-on-one setting can be very valuable. So yeah, communicating that in that setting is very important.
It's so important. And I love how you phrased all that because, again, they're not all equal. And you've said that. You've said individual many times, and I can't agree with that more. They're all individuals. They're not all the same. But we don't have to say you must only do this. We can give them, say, 2 possibilities instead of 3. And that still affords them the opportunity to be able to solve a problem for themselves and for their team. And I love that part of it. But some players can have all the decisions and all the opportunities. And it's such a beautiful way to coach, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You got to be, I think, being the best thing that I think our program does is we tell the truth all the time. We coach in truth and probably coach our best players harder because to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that the kids in this era, they need to hear the truth from their coaches. I think that's so important. And how they receive the message, that'll dictate and determine their future in a lot of ways, not only here, but overall, because this game is a beautiful game. You turn on the NBA, like what you don't realize, like every guy that you're wanting to be like has strengths and weaknesses. The best of the best play to their strengths and hide their weaknesses the best. And that's the truth. And that comes out in terms of winning basketball, but also statistically, that'll come out and show that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what his gifts are, and he plays to his strengths. And in a lot of ways, that's to me, what makes basketball so enjoyable to coach.
And it's awesome because unintentionally you're connecting back to your value of the special player, like the unique player. Because
Sure.
again, you're identifying this is a strength. And I understand these things, they're not really weaknesses, they're just realities. He can't
Yeah.
shoot. That's a reality.
Yeah.
But he has other strengths and that type of thing. And that's such an important part of coaching, I think, at all levels, is maximizing those players.
Chris, I want to say this too, because I think it's a really important thought especially for younger coaches out there is connecting with your kids on a level to empower them, right? I don't want them to see this as limitations. I want them to take pride in what they're great at. Okay. And there's a rubber meets road moment for all of us as players and coaches, right? Where it's, hey, I could either keep butting my head with coach and we can keep going at each other all year, or at some point, I'm going to buy in. And not only, I think what I found is if we can get guys not just to buy in, but to take such great pride in cornering the market on that area that you as a coach deem so important to winning and get them to buy into that. I think what I've seen is kids become more comfortable in their own skin. And so much of this when you're young is trying to find your way and prove that you can do this and prove that you can do that. And the reality is, like, when you can get to a point where you're confident in who you are and what you bring to your basketball team, that's when you've got something. So I think that's so important, especially when coaching a modern aged college athlete.
Yeah, Dr. Alex Auerbach that was on our podcast talked about, and I had never thought of it this way, but it connects to what you're saying. He talks about giving players a fixed mindset about some things because we're all about growth mindset. We got to constantly improve, constantly get better, constantly. But you know what? Some things need to be fixed that you're already good at this, so do this. And that's
Yeah.
how what you're saying and how you're saying it. And it's just an awesome connection. The other thing I just want to circle back to, because I think this is arguably one of the most important things in modern coaching is those individual conversations, those mini conversations you have with
Yeah.
players that you can deliver the same information we used to deliver 20, 30 years ago, but we do it differently.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it comes back to life skills, right? Like connecting with individual. I could never relate to a football coach. Okay. I have to relate to 15 guys and I have to know those guys inside and out. If I was a football coach, I might have 100. That I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do there. I love the size of our group and it allows you to really pour into each individual. The message, them receiving the message is predicated on the trust level between the two of you, right? And how do you gain trust? It's repeated interactions where consistent behavior is demonstrated between coach and player. And there's a real honesty and truth of your messaging as a coach. And I don't aspire to have my players always agree with my viewpoints, but understand and respect it. That is essential in team basketball. So much of this is about me, what's best for me, what I want to do. And there's a balance that's required in our sport of individual goal setting and what is best for the team. There's two different dynamics at play there. And I think the quality of your interactions, your trust level, your relationships can go a long way to determining the buy-in and also the clarity that they receive the message as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, Chris, but I think that's
It adds
real
value
important.
to the question and the comment, maybe more than anything, coach. And I love this line. It again gives us incredible insights in terms of the success you've had as a head coach at Illinois State. And let's go here, since we're on this trail, so to speak. What is your philosophy then on player leadership, and how do you encourage your players to take on leadership roles?
Yeah, and this is an area in the off season I want to really improve within our program. In full transparency, we have captains; those are voted on by the players. When the captains are established, I meet with those guys. We don't have a set day or anything that we meet, but we meet fairly regularly. We talk about issues that may be occurring on the team, ways that they can help. I want to ask a lot of questions in those meetings to empower them and see what they're seeing and then encourage them to act on those. The importance of not just seeing it and observing it, but doing something about it. We consider ourselves very much a solutions-based program. It's never personal. It's never personal. And I want to continue to reiterate that. And I think you have to continue to reiterate that if that's something you believe in. But our coaching is never, ever personal. It's solutions-based. We don't get down on players. We don't get down on one another. We don't get down on ourselves. But the leadership development is an area that I want to really grow this off season in terms of my own personal self, but also my ability to, in a non-traditional way, grow my players. There's times that we talk about other issues. There's times that we discuss things that may not have to do exactly with our team, but maybe an example of something that happened in the NBA. And I want to get their takes on it and try to empower them as leaders. But I think there's room for growth for all young people because there's so many life lessons. And that's what I try to impart on my captains in my leadership group is that there's so many life lessons within what they're doing, that the adversity, normalizing the struggle that is part of being a college athlete, not comparing yourself to people around you, not looking at social media for the truth and the meaning, understanding there's a difference between perception and reality. Young people don't always understand that and appreciate that. Trying to teach them lessons that go far beyond our sport, but also that have relevance and value within a team setting in our locker room.
Great stuff. And again, we can see the foundation of the program and the way you speak. It's beautiful. This may be a challenging question, but I like it. And you're ready for it. Your 3 years so far at Illinois State. What was one thing that you did at the beginning when you first got the job that you would 100% do every single time you got a new job? That you said, this is absolutely the thing that I would do.
Yeah, I think early on, I think about the DNA and our values, right? I established those. And I think early on, when you take over a program, no matter what shape it's in, it's going to be, you have to put your stamp on it. I'm just trying to put myself in different scenarios here. Like, even if I was a guy like Mark Few that took over for Dan Monson a long time ago, right? He's not going to completely recreate that program because he was an assistant there. He's going to step into a new role, but there's an element of he's going to have to define and redefine a little bit his stamp and what that looks like. I think the clarity of that's important. For me, coming in here was following a totally different situation and a different coach and a guy I had real respect for, but I would probably do my program a little bit differently and how I was building it. And I just think that the consistency and the clarity of the messaging that you have the whole entire year. I would say the first year, especially, like your players cannot hear your DNA, your values, your basketball values, your expectations, what it should look like, what it should act like, what it should feel like. They cannot hear that enough. And I think I tried to really wear that out in year one in basically everything that we did on and off the floor, how we talked to the people that worked in our building, not walking by somebody without acknowledging or saying hello, just a way that our actions shaped and would shape over the long haul the culture of our program. So I hope that it gives you a good answer there, but I just think the clarity and consistency of your messaging, that was something that I would absolutely not change if I was taking over a new program.
Yeah, great answer. They can't hear it enough. They can't hear it enough. And that's a great part of it. Is there something in retrospect that you did that didn't work as well as you thought?
Yeah, you have a lot of things there that come to mind. I was okay with it being a little bit of a slower build. And here we are after year 3, and we have built it up. But I don't know that I would have done that differently. There's definitely an argument that I needed to be more intentional about just going and getting the talent needed for that team. I was more focused on planting the seeds, having the guys that I thought would allow us to grow. Okay.
And you had support from your administration to do that, I imagine?
We did.
Because maybe if you got the job this year, it sounds like a lot of administrations don't have that patience anymore, do they?
I know. It's very true. And that's why I said, if I were to get a job today, would it look a little different? I think it probably would, because this whole system has gone haywire in a lot of ways. And I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good for kids. I don't think it's good for coaches. I don't think that what's going on is good for anybody, because what it's doing is it's succumbing to the immediacy of results. And for forever and ever, team building has been a process driven entity here, right? This is an endeavor that we're all diving into that requires a lot. You're meshing pieces together. And in this modern world, now you might be meshing 10 to 13 different players together if you take over a new program, almost guaranteed. And that takes some time. And I hate that coaches are judged so quickly. I'm fortunate because, yeah, we did do this a certain way. And you could argue that maybe that's archaic in this era, even 3 years into it. But I just feel like I won't come off of that. I don't ever want to be fully transactional. I don't want to be that. I don't. And if that drives me out of the business somewhere, some way, at some time down the road, I'll be at peace with myself because I really believe in the process of all this. And I get it. People would say, hey, man, that's not how it's done anymore. You better figure it out. I get it. But
Isn't that
I
crazy?
just,
3 years in, and we're saying that's not how you do it anymore.
it's
But
crazy.
the right people, you could do it this way, and that's such an important part of it.
I admire the people that can do it. I'm watching these, even some of the big time coaches, the way that they're recalibrating their rosters and that they just keep on going. I admire the guys that can do that. I think that's awesome. I'm just more of the development, the nurturing, the keeping a perspective on the growth. It's easier said than done. I think you have to have some fortitude about you to say, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to be true to this from start to finish. I had some trying moments myself in our first 3 years, all 3 years. There's moments where there's normal emotions. What I've learned in this, Chris, is that inner doubt, fear, anxiety, wonder, inner questioning, if you want to act like that's not the case, go ahead. But like, it's part of the process, man. And I think it's made me a better coach, a better person. I had to figure it out. I had to figure it out. And until you're in that position, you say, man, I'm having these feelings or I'm having these thoughts and it's normal, dude. It is normal. It's a normal part of taking a program from start to where you envision it being. And if there's not doubt, hesitation, fear, anxiety, whatever it is, whatever that emotion is, then you're probably not doing it right. And you're probably not going through tough enough stuff. Maybe it's all smooth sailing for some people. I don't know. But for most of us, I would say there's a real process to this. And I think that it's made me a better coach by leaning into it and at times leaning on people that were mentors for me. But a big part of it is just figuring it out yourself and trusting your instincts, your experience, your beliefs, and your convictions.
Well, thank you for humanizing coaching because that's,
Yeah,
I think we don't do that enough. And I know
I
it's more
agree.
media and fans that don't. And I know coaches humanize it to each other, but we need to humanize it because it is really, even coaching 11-year-old AU after 30 years of coaching, I have doubt. Oh, did I do this right? Should I have done something differently? Like it's all part of it.
And Chris, I think it's so important to mention this too. There's never before in our being has there been more access for people on the outside to disturb that and disrupt that. And we each have to find our own solutions as coaches to our happiness and our healthiness. And for me, that would be staying off of social media through the season. For me, that would be limiting my circle, speaking to people and leaning on people I trust. But there's so many poisonous entities on the outside for you as a coach, but for your players as well. And that's a whole masterclass that we could talk about, but you have to have a game plan. I would challenge each coach and player. What is your plan for dealing with this stuff, man? Because I have seen it mess people up, coaches and players. And when I was at Ohio State, Butler, Illinois, on a little bit bigger stages, so to speak, in terms of fandom, I saw it really mess kids up. And sometimes they're too proud to admit that, but I know exactly why things are messing them up. And they're listening to these idiots on the outside that are commenting or saying things or DMing them that have nothing to do with their success. And the reality is it's a journey and a process for all of us, but it's a lot easier to get derailed than it is to stay on the rails in this era when you're going through tough stuff.
It's such a great point and great insight in terms of the dealing with the modern athlete and all the noise that they have to deal with as well. Coach, and to say all this that you've said, and you won. You had a final game where you got a chance to win. And that's no matter what tournament, whatever situation in basketball, if you get to win your last game, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is. This is going into year 25 as a collegiate coach. This will be going into year 4 as a head coach. Never experienced finishing the season on a win. So how cool is that? It was great for our program for a variety of reasons. And I think I've learned this along the way, Chris, is when you're building, you can't get immersed completely in the results, right? This has been a journey that we're on here, and we're going year 1 to year 2, and then year 2 to year 3. And to be able to celebrate the victories along the way, I think is so important as coaches. As you're building a program, I would encourage all coaches, you got to enjoy those moments. I realize it's easier said than done. I'm probably not the greatest example of that, but the older I get, the more I try to do that. Celebrate one another, celebrate the growth that you have, the small wins, no matter how big or how small. For our program, I think we're at a point where we had some real tangible growth this year that showed in different ways. To be able to cap a season of growth off with a CBI championship, that was tremendous for our kids, for our program. And now we've got to create momentum moving forward. I don't want to maintain momentum. I want to build and continue to grow and ultimately fly on that momentum. But momentum's fragile. Culture is earned daily, and we understand that. Our kids know that, and none of us came here with all due respect. We love playing in the CBI. We were proud champions of the CBI. We didn't come here to win the CBI. We came here to win the conference and play in the NCAA tournament and advance in the NCAA tournament. And that's hopefully where this program is headed. And we're really excited about the guys in our locker room and where our program's headed as a whole.
Now we're all excited, Coach. We're grateful for you sharing, and congrats on the season and all you've done so far. And yeah, we're super excited to see what you do next and how you build and continue to grow and all those things that you shared with us. So thank you so much for sharing the game with us.
Hey, Chris, thank you. And I want to say thank you too for all that you do for not just college basketball, but basketball in general, people that love this sport, the coaches in this sport. I've known you for a long time, and you've built this empire now, basketball immersion, that everyone knows who you are and what you do for the game. But I don't want it ever to be lost. Like people like you've helped the coaches like myself and tons of others grow as people and as coaches. And if we can do our part to mentor this generation the right way and grow this the right way, good things will come from that. So again, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. I'm humbled and grateful to be a part of your journey or anyone's journey, and just tremendous, Coach. Thank you so much.